Hey everyone, it's Mare from SickMom, checking in for day 26. So I thought today we'd dive right into a subject that has definitely been on my mind since starting the carnivore diet, and that is fat. So it's going to be all about fat and why we need it on the carnivore diet, and and why being on carnivore creates different requirements for fat than being on a low fat diet with high carbs or with carbs and protein. So, just at the top, one of the first things that I kind of took as a little nugget of information about fat is that if you are not getting enough fat in your diet, you're probably going to be feeling tired. You might actually get constipated. And just generally speaking, things are probably not going to transition as well as you would like them to at the beginning. And I've had some pretty lean meat in the last couple of weeks. Just like I said, I'm eating through my deep freeze so that I can make room for some more cow. So I've definitely been very aware of my fat intake every day and looking at the meats that I'm having and going, okay, lean turkey, yeah, there's like no fat in there. So you definitely have to add fat. And the fats that I'm using or the fats that I'm eating are things like the fat on a steak. I'm not trimming that. I sometimes will add butter to my steak or to other meats, or conversely, sometimes bacon fat does the job too if I'm not feeling like butter. But you can, you can add fat to pretty much any meat. So if you're kind of going, well, it seems really weird to be adding fat to stuff because we've always been told, fat is bad and you should eat lean meats and stay away from too much red meat. I get that. However, when you're on a carnivore diet, the whole point is that you become fat adapted so that you are burning fat as fuel. Okay, so instead of the normal metabolism that most people have is that, you eat a mix of carbohydrates, fats, and protein. And carbohydrate is the fuel, and the protein is the building block, and the fat is just, you know, if you're eating lots of carbs and protein, you want to stay on the leaner fat side. You don't want to necessarily add that to the mix. And there's a lot of science behind that. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of the science. I do have videos saved in the Carnivore Resources playlist that do go through this in great detail. I'm not here to give you all a science lesson. I'm just trying to give you an overview of the things I'm having to consider. So when you are approaching ketosis or if you are on a carnivore diet, your body needs to switch from using carbohydrates to using fat instead. And then when you start metabolizing fat and burning that for fuel, you start developing ketone bodies that your brain can use because your brain needs very specific types of fuel. And one of those fuels that it can use are ketone bodies. So again, going back to not having enough fat versus too much fat, especially at the beginning, too much fat can trigger some pretty heavy duty diarrhea. And I was watching a video about a week and a half ago with Kelly Hogan, and she was talking about, the adaptation period, and that's something people mention quite often is, the bowel issue and the sense of urgency when they are starting to have a high fat diet. And she just kind of put it really simply. If you're having problem going, you need more fat. If you don't have any issues and you have to go all the time, maybe cut back on your fat just a little bit until you find that sweet spot. Now, I'm not expecting to know that sweet spot until I have kind of gotten out of the adaptation phase and probably into my second month, I would say. Because I'm almost done my first month. I can't believe it. So I'm looking forward to not having to add fat to my meat, but I know that that's just something that's going to happen. I mean, you go to a restaurant, and especially here, a lot of the restaurants, they trim their meat so that it's very lean and it's beautiful, unless you're ordering prime rib. And then usually you do get some of the fat, but I personally, I like my fat a little bit rendered. I like it cooked just a bit. And when it comes on prime rib, it's like, yeah, that I have a hard time eating that. So when I'm at home, I make sure that the fat actually starts to get cooked, so it starts getting a little bit more translucent, and you do get a better flavor out of that. But it definitely is a flip in a mindset, because I remember the late 80s, early 90s, when everything was low fat. Oh, low fat yogurt, diet pop, diet everything, the artificial sweeteners. And fat was the evil bad guy. I learned, as I continued to do my own personal research in different ways of eating through the years, especially while I was still very athletic, this was kind of top of mind to see, okay, well, what is the best way to feed my body? And, do I need to go no fat or low fat? And the answer that I came across was no. I mean, there should be a ratio, a portion of fat. And I think in the standard American diet, or the SAD diet as they call it, you need to have, between, I'd say 10 on the low side, 30% on the average side is what they recommend. Whereas in a carnivore diet, you're looking at a 2-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. So you need to get the bulk of your energy from the fat that you're taking in. Here's an analogy that I used to try and explain the difference between carbohydrates and protein, when I was in college and trying to explain this stuff to people, was that, if you've got a car, and let's say you've got building blocks, like, you've got bricks for a house, because you've got your house and then you have your car that you drive around back and forth to wherever you need to go. So the bricks that you use for your house, if you put those in your gas tank, your car's probably not going to go very far. So as far as the fuel that the car needs, you need gasoline, or you can equate that to carbohydrates. And so, you've got your car that is really solid, but without the right fuel, it's going to go nowhere. So trying to use bricks, or even if you look at the materials that your vehicle is made up of, metal, plastics, leather, whatever, if you stick any of that in your gas tank, your car is still not going to go very far, if at all. So here we're trying to adapt ourselves so that the fat goes into the gas tank and it creates the energy that you need to go. Yeah, that's probably as far as I want to get into that. But you kind of get an idea that, there's certain things that can be repurposed, like carbohydrates and fat can both be used as fuel, but you cannot have them as fuel sources together and be very efficient. So if you do have carbohydrates in your diet, being on a high fat, high carbohydrate diet is a recipe for disaster. The carbohydrates have to be at a minimum so that you can get into that state of ketosis and that you can become fat adapted, so that your brain gets the ketones that it needs to run and that your fat gets used for fuel. That becomes your body's preferred fuel source. We're very adaptable creatures. We do have bodies that can run on different kinds of fuel, but for 50 or 70 years or even longer, fat's always been just such this, it's been the villain for everything, for heart disease and all kinds of stuff. And it has been taken out of context because that's not looking at the whole picture of what a person is eating. So if you just blame fat without looking at the protein and carbohydrate intake that a person has, you're not getting the complete picture. And if anyone's ever done any scientific experiments, you would know that that would create a pretty weak experiment because you're not checking and testing for other conditions. You're not having, you're not saying that, okay, well, this person has X percentage of fat in their diet, and also explaining that they're trying to keep the carbohydrates and proteins at the same percentages. So that way it's kind of consistent. Even then, you would have to go further and then start exploring what kind of carbohydrates people are eating. And let's be really clear on something. When people say they're on a no carb diet, this was something that really bugged me when Atkins was very popular. People would say, oh yeah, I'm on a no carb diet. And they'd be sitting there chowing down on their salad or their cut vegetables. And I'm like, well, what do you call those? Well, those are vegetables. Yes, what do you think those are? Those are carbohydrates. Oh, because, we're talking about, when they talk about low carb in something like the Atkins diet, for instance, they were talking about low starchy carbs and keeping your really sweet vegetables or grains like carrots and corn down to a minimum, just because they're inherently very sweet. They do have a lot of natural sugars. So those weren't ideal choices. And then they have like the free vegetables, like celery is kind of one of those free vegetables when people are on a quote unquote diet, because it actually takes more energy. You expend more energy digesting the celery than you actually get out of eating the celery. So it's a calorie negative food. I've never been a calorie counter. I have always just kind of gone by, okay, let's have a look at how much protein and how much fat and how much carbohydrate. Where's the carbohydrate coming from? Is it coming from added sugar or is it coming from normal sugar? All of these years of trying different permutations, I've tried just about everything under the sun until Carnivore came along. So this is something that is new. It's not a new concept. It's been around for 3.5 billion years. But as far as modern day eating and nutrition science, it's been slow to jump on and support, I guess, the carnivore diet, just because everybody is kind of going with, they take it as a given that you should have carbohydrates, protein, and fat, and that fat is evil. Until we can let go of that and we can start factoring in individuals and how they process foods, for instance, my friends that are vegan or that are vegetarian and that are quite happy and quite healthy on those particular ways of eating. That doesn't work for me. If I go on an all plant-based diet, I start having such huge issues with my irritable bowel syndrome as well as other things. The grouchiness and just never really feeling all that satisfied. There are some things that I adore. I mean, I love vegetarian curries and legumes and all of that are very satisfying. But those dishes tend to have more fat in them. So they taste better. You feel more satisfied after you've eaten them. If I eat too much salad, I spend an afternoon in the bathroom because it makes my irritable bowel just everything. It's like, okay, yeah, we've just got to get rid of whatever you put in here because this isn't working for us. I've had such a lower level of gastro issues in the past 26 days than I have probably in the, in the month beforehand or even a couple of months before, because I've been having a lot of issues with my GI tract. So far, it seems like my body is happier on this way of eating. It's happier. The inflammation and swelling is just dropping. And I think I may have mentioned this briefly in another video, but when you start factoring in that when people go on something that is quite radical like this, or even when they start keto, and a lot of people talk about sudden or rapid weight loss, I'm not viewing any of this as weight loss because I know how much inflammation and swelling I have had in my body. And that's been really prevalent since the summer. But now it's going away. And I'm still making sure that I'm drinking lots of water. I am making sure I'm getting enough salt in a day. On the days where I'm feeling a little bit low energy, or just really having a hard time focus or feel slightly off, I am taking some electrolytes still. And I'm still taking some vitamin C at the moment, even though further I get into this and the higher quality meat that I eat that doesn't have to be cooked 100%. So, like, eating a steak that isn't well done, I prefer rare or medium rare. I can get my vitamin C from that. But for now, just to make sure, I'm topping up, and I'm just going to go until I finish the bottle of vitamin C tablets that I have, and then I'm not going to buy any more. Later, if I find I'm needing more things like magnesium, for instance, I've been taking magnesium for years to help with my migraines as well as with my pain levels in my body. And I haven't taken any magnesium now for probably just over a month. I was going to buy some when I decided to do carnivore, but I saw a lot of people saying, no, you don't really have to worry about supplementing. There are some people that are very, very adamant that you need to supplement. And those tend to be the people that have, and I'm just going to generalize a little bit, so please don't crucify me here. The people that haven't been doing carnivore as long tend to be the ones who talk about supplementation a lot. The people who have been doing carnivore for 10 plus years are not. For the most part, they just kind of go, no, I don't supplement with anything. Or they might supplement with one thing or another specific to them, but not necessarily recommending supplementation across the board. So that's kind of all I wanted to cover for today, was just having a really good conversation about fats, first of all, and then also talking about the supplements that I'm taking. If you do have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. I'm just so thankful for you all coming to join me on this and for watching this video. Please give us a like in the bar just below, and show us some love. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. There's lots of really exciting content that is coming up as we reach our day 30 of carnivore, and I'm going to be wrapping up the daily videos and then just posting updates. So there's going to be a lot more coming to you soon. So stay tuned, hit that notification bell so you know exactly when those videos are landing. I am also going to be doing some live videos, and I would love some questions, coaching questions. If you guys are working through an issue. Now, I am not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I am a coach. So what I can do for you is not the same as what a psychologist or a psychiatrist would do. If you need a psychologist or a counselor, that is a resource that we can get you connected with. If you're not even sure where to start, we can have a conversation about where you find the people that you need. But as a coach, I'm the one who's going to help you look at the things that you're having issues with and just try and unpack that a little bit to see if we can get some resolution or some traction or get moving in a new direction if that is what you so desire. So start thinking about your questions. I'd really love to have some questions in advance. Eventually, I will be having people live on the air with me, but I would love to have some questions prepared that I can just get the answers to you. And then maybe if we have time, we can get a person or two to come on live with me. So again, this is SickMom checking out.